So when I learned Chinese, the emphasis was on speaking from the start.
There are languages that feel impossible to learn for many learners, and Chinese is one of them, at least for many people. If you would ask them, do you think it's easy to learn Chinese? Many would say, no, it's impossible, it's super difficult, etc. But Dhananjay was able to do it. He's a polyglot, and one of the languages he speaks is Chinese. And so I wanted to learn about his experience, how he did it, not only how he learned it, but also how he dealt with mindset issues. Because I'm learning Japanese myself, and I know it's not the same language, but still I'm facing some mindset issues. Sometimes I'm like, is it even worth it? Because I need to dedicate so much time and I'm making progress so slowly that I don't know if it's worth it for me specifically, and for the time I have and everything. And I thought it would be interesting to just learn how he did it, if he thinks age matters. He started quite young. If he thinks that the mindset is more important than the actual learning, etc. So because we had a huge conversation, I wanted to also be mindful of your time. So I'm going to just present to you the most important or the most highlight things he said. And so if you want to watch the whole interview, you can become a patron or a member. You will see the whole video there. And yeah, thanks a lot to my patrons, and let's get started. Sometimes in this channel, you might remember, I've talked about the fact that I would love to dedicate insane amount of time to Japanese. So treat it like a job. Be like, yeah, 8 hours every day for 2 weeks, and then just see where I am after that. Because I have a life and a job and everything, like I've never been able to do that, but it's a thing I would love to do because I feel it would give me really a jump start. I would be able to make so much progress that would motivate me, and maybe it would just take my mindset issues away, who knows. And so Dhananjay is the first person I've met who actually did that. And how intense was it? How many hours? Was it like one of those courses where you're like 5 hours a day or something?
Yeah, yeah. It was
Wow.
5 hours a day, something like that. Yeah. And I also did Spanish actually.
Wow, at the same time.
Just before I did Spanish, that was in
Yeah.
a language school in London. Yeah.
I think those crash courses can be great, like, because they motivate you because you notice progress, right?
Yeah. They're very yeah, very interesting experiences. Yeah.
So
I
what were you able to do with Chinese after 2 weeks of intense
it was
work?
tough. I mean, yeah, I reached 2 weeks. I think it was 2 weeks rather than 1 week, but I reached an A2 level at least, but
What?
I got through it.
Wow. Did everyone in that group reach that level, or was it only you? Just because
Oh, it was
I
just
think
me.
it's
It was one to
crazy.
one.
It was one to one. I thought it was like a group.
It
Okay,
was
okay.
one to one and it was really, really intense. And I actually had done the same thing in Spanish just a few weeks before. Uh,
Wow.
so even when you was one to one with different teachers, the teachers would change. But even during lunch breaks, etc., you would try and practice Spanish and Chinese with the teacher or whichever language.
Wow. Everyone's process is different. And so he learned very fast and he was able to communicate at a basic level after 2 weeks. But of course, he's also a polyglot. He already had learned some languages before, so that might have been an advantage. And I wanted to ask him if he feels like the fact that he was so young, he was 16 when he started, played a big role or not.
I don't believe that age is a big factor at all, actually.
Okay.
I know there's different schools of thought on this, but yeah, there's many people within our community, for example, who have learnt a lot of languages at an older age. Uh,
Yes.
and so I would put the emphasis always on, and this is what I say in my content as well, on passion and motivation.
What about reading and writing though? We all know that written Chinese is very complex and takes a long time to learn and to master. And one thing that I also ask myself about Japanese is like, how important is it to be able to read it and to write in that language? Because I feel like if your main focus maybe is to communicate, to talk to people, and that's something you're gonna do most of the time, and you're not that interested in the other areas, like maybe you can just not focus on them. But I don't know, what do you think? And now we will see what he thinks.
So, I mean, I'd love to learn more of the script, but
Yeah.
it just takes a long time. I don't think there's any shortcuts with that.
Yeah. Yeah, and you'd think probably like, is it really worth it? Like if you think about, yeah, the time you need to
Yeah.
invest, and then maybe you're more interested in speaking, and then anyways, it's like maybe 20% of the time you would spend writing or reading, and then it's like, well, whatever, right? It's not worth it for you specifically.
Yeah, I mean, I would say communication with other cultures and people is the main thing that motivates me in learning languages, which I guess is the same for you, would
Yeah,
say.
I mean, yeah, actually had another guest recently, and we were talking about the fact that, like, without community and without being able to talk to other people, like, what would be the point of learning, right? To me, it's very refreshing to talk to someone who actually says, hey, I'm just gonna focus on the things I personally need. It doesn't mean that it's wrong to learn written Chinese. You do you. Do you really need it? Is it something you'll be using a lot? I think those are questions that will save us a lot of time. If you're learning a language to speak it mainly, maybe you don't have to learn to write and read. It's up to you. I'm not saying this is the right answer. It's just it depends on the person and what you will need the language for. If you have to study at the university in China, well, you will need to learn to read and write, okay? I would love to learn about your experience. Actually, myself, if I think about Chinese, well, of course, written Chinese is very complicated, very complex, but I also have heard that the tones can be very difficult. And comparing it to my experience with Japanese, I probably think that the vocabulary is also very different. So there are not so many Indo-European words, right? And I think that can be complex, but I would love to hear also about what is easy about Chinese. I also heard that, past, present, and future use the same form or something like that, but I've never actually studied Chinese, so I will just let him talk about it.
So I can go through what were the easier parts and the harder parts,
Yeah, sure.
which would be similar for many learners. So the tones are definitely challenging at the start. The Mandarin Chinese has four tones, yeah. Um,
Wow.
that took me time to differentiate between them, and to distinguish them as well. Yeah, there's a clear distinction between different tones. So ma would be mum, for instance, and ma is a horse. So those are not words that you want to
You
mix
want,
up because
yeah,
you
crazy.
call somebody's mum a horse by mistake. So it's important to be able to distinguish between them, and that takes a bit of time.
Mm.
Other aspects were actually a lot easier, like the simplified grammar. Uh,
Yeah. There's
yeah,
like no past and no future, right?
exactly. So things like I don't know, I've been learning Chinese for 3 years now or something. Yeah, you would simply say I already. Yeah, you could put in the word already to clarify as well. Learn Chinese 3 years, and then le, which is the kind of marker which simply shows that it's usually that it's completed action.
So if I say I've been learning Chinese for 3 years, and I then say I will learn Chinese for 3 years, like the difference in Chinese to that sentence, would it be like a marker or
Yes.
some word like already or something?
Yeah, it would be a marker. So you often use words like already, 已经, to specify that it's something that's in the past.
Oh,
And you've also got the marker le, which shows that it's a completed action or
ah,
started in the past, even if it's ongoing.
interesting. Okay. And so, okay, so you'd say that's maybe the easiest part of Chinese.
Yes, the simplified grammar. If it's the future tense, then you'd use say hui or yao to show that it's future tense. Yeah, to show.
Wow. Is everyone able to learn Chinese? That would be my last question, because I sometimes think if I dedicated many hours to Chinese or Japanese, if I had a lot of time, I would be able to learn it. But in my current setting of dedicating like few minutes a day to it, if at all, I don't think I am able. But let's say if I would dedicate 30 minutes a day to Japanese for a year, I don't think I would make very fast progress. And that leads to the question, if you have a normal life, let's say you don't have much time, will you be able to learn it or not?
I think it's tough at the start, but actually a lot of the difficulty people have with Chinese is the mental side.
Yeah, I do have a mindset issue also with
Yeah.
Japanese. I notice and I recognize that because it just takes so much time that I'm always questioning if it's worth it, and then automatically maybe putting less effort into it,
Yes.
you
So a
know?
lot of people, if you asked a random person whether they could learn Chinese, a random person on the street, they'd say, no, that's way too difficult. I would never, and they wouldn't even try.
They wouldn't
So
even start. That's right,
yes.
yeah.
So there are challenges, but once your brain gets used to the tone and the tonal system, for instance, it can make it easier for subsequent languages as well. Like the tiny bit of Thai that I did was a lot easier because my brain had some familiarity with tones.
Wow, okay, yeah, makes sense. Yeah, that's a great tip. Thanks a lot. What has been your experience with Chinese, or maybe a language you found difficult? I would love to know. Please leave a comment down below. As said in the beginning, you can go watch the full interview if you're interested on Patreon or if you're a member. Thanks a lot to everyone, and I will also leave below the links to Dhananjay's Instagram and all the links you might find interesting. He's a French teacher, so if you're looking for a French teacher, maybe you can contact him. So thanks a lot and have a great day.